Okay, now that we got the legalities out of the way from our friends at Zoom, we can actually start talking.
Sure.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, how are you?
Not bad. How are you?
I'm good.
So this has got to be a big moment for you. Maybe next to getting your law degree and starting your own practice, you are the first returning guest on Did You Know That?
Wow, really?
You
I'm very
are.
honored. Very honored.
I can imagine it's now difficult to rank these honors that you have throughout your career and what have you. But
This is on the top though.
this has got to be in the top 100 at some point.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
but as the folks, I didn't hit record before we started talking, but both of us have had to admit that these lists that we've created were very difficult to whittle down.
Very difficult. This was hard. I didn't think it would be as hard as it was.
Well, that's good. That means we're going to get good lists out of it, and we'll tell everybody which lists we're going over in just a second. But first, as always, I want to thank Stephanie for doing this. She joined us previously to talk about HIPAA, but today's going to be a much more fun conversation along those lines. And I want to thank all the folks for tuning in. Welcome to another episode of Did You Know That? ? The channel where I get to talk to interesting people about interesting topics. If you're new to the channel, I want to welcome you. If you like this episode or previous ones, make sure you hit the subscribe button. It's somewhere down there. You'll see it on the screen. And be sure to click the bell, because then you'll get notified as new content goes up. If you're a returning visitor, thank you very much for your patronage. Hope you've enjoyed the recent run of top 10 lists. This is another addition to that theme. And for those of you who don't know, my name is Sean O'Rourke. And when I'm not putting top 10 lists together that are taking me hours and hours and hours to do, I'm a cyber liability consultant for Combs & Company, which is an insurance brokerage firm in New York City. So Stephanie, just remind people who you are and what you do, and then we're going to get into this fun.
Sure. So it's Stephanie Rodin. I'm the owner of Rodin Legal PC, and I concentrate on assisting healthcare practitioners with their practices so that they can remain protected with the use of people like Sean and other type of professionals. So this way they can focus on the patient care and not have to worry about the legalities and other issues that surrounds their practices.
Well, fantastic. And if you haven't seen Stephanie's episode, go back and check it out. We did have a very interesting conversation about HIPAA, how COVID has changed, how HIPAA is going to be applied possibly. And plus the fact it's just fun to see the two of us banter back and forth. But today is going to be a really good one, because today Stephanie and I are going to talk about our top 10 TV shows. And I really thought that this was going to be the easiest list for me, and it wasn't. The easiest list turned out to be my music list. This and the movie lists were my two hardest ones. And I'm still not sure if I really have my top 10. It might change in a week.
I have to agree with that. My top 3, solid. Everything else is a little movable, like in all honesty. And it's a lot of it was based upon what the TV shows brought to me at the time that I was watching them, because this dates back. So I had 2 criteria. The first was I had seen either all of the episodes in the series or the majority of the episodes.
Sure.
And I had to have rewatched it or have the ability to want to rewatch it for it to hit my list.
And you know what? That shows you how in tune Stephanie and I usually are, because I gave you no direction on this. I just told you top 10 list TV shows, but you and I approached it exactly the same.
Really?
So basically, it would have to be a show that if it comes on or if I see it on the guide, I'll stop and watch.
Right.
Or I have the ability to go watch it in an on-demand fashion, whether I have to pop a DVD in, because some of these aren't available any longer on a stream. But it's still, I basically have the ability to pop it in. And I did. I covered my childhood. Some of these Yeah, at least one of these, two of these started before I was even born. So.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, same with mine, actually.
Well,
now that I'm looking at it. Okay.
Yeah, but you're well younger than me, so the time frame is different. But it's going to be fun. And as folks who've watched the previous episodes about books and music know, our guest fires first. So Stephanie, and I've got my pen,
Okay.
and I've got my pad right here to write down your list. Stephanie, what's number 10?
Number 10 is Dallas.
Oh.
Now, the reason behind Dallas is, one, I was in elementary school when it was all like Who Shot JR and that whole thing.
Sure.
It was on Friday nights. Mm-hmm. It was at 9 o'clock. I was never allowed to stay up. So I used to sneak downstairs and watch my parents watch it from behind the couch so that they didn't know that I was there. And I completely got into it. And then as I got older, I started watching it. And then on a trip that my family took to Israel, I met Victoria Principal in person. And I never would have known that if I didn't watch Dallas. So it all sort of like came together. And I just love the drama of it. Yeah, it was the introduction into night soap operas and just drama and dysfunctional families. So it was good. I liked it.
That is an excellent call. I wasn't into it. I did get into the Who Shot JR summer because if you remember, that was the season finale, him lying on the floor of his office.
Yep.
And the whole summer, I mean, hell, it was on the cover of Time magazine, Who Shot JR? And then you get the answer. So that's a good call. If I remember correctly, that Friday night lineup, I think it was Dukes of Hazzard, Dallas, and then Falcon Crest.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
That was the Friday night lineup on CBS. Yep. I watched Dukes of Hazzard, but sometimes tuned in for Dallas. And Dallas, I will say this, Dallas had one of the coolest TV openings.
Oh, absolutely.
In history. That whole opening with the montage of images and what have you, and the music was really good.
No, it was good. It was good. Definitely brings me back to childhood. No question.
Yeah. Solid pick. Okay. So my number 10 is a show that started before I was born. So I saw these in rerun, and they've spawned a major movie franchise. The show did, but I don't think the movie franchise ever captured I don't know how to put it. I don't want to say intelligence because the movies are actually very smart and what have you. They're just more action oriented. And I think it was the nature of the subtlety of the action of this show that really got me. And it was Mission Impossible.
Okay.
So I remember the first time I ever heard this recording will self-destruct in 5 seconds. I mean, I thought that is, and then you watch it go up and I didn't realize it at the time. It wasn't really burning. They were just blowing smoke through a tube and what have you. But I thought it was the coolest freaking thing I had seen. My mother, who introduced me to pretty much all the TV that was on before I was born or when I was too young, but she and I would sit there and watch it. And I would always get so concerned when something wasn't going according to plan. And she would just pat my arm and say, just watch. And Mission Impossible is my number 10.
Wow. I watched it, but I didn't watch it religiously. But I loved the opening, anytime that there was like an issue going on in that music.
Right. Talk about music. I mean, the Lalo Schifrin theme song. That and SWAT might be the 2 best theme songs in the history of television. Maybe. Yeah. I mean, there have been a lot of good ones back when you could have time for openings, but that Mission Impossible one is iconic.
Yeah. No, good pick.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Number 9.
Number 9 is House.
Oh, he's on my didn't quite make top 10.
Now, for House, first off, I loved the fact that it was Hugh Laurie doing an American accent when he's English. That was first, right? I love how he was always on medication. He was always on painkillers. The entire show, he's high. Every single show.
Yep.
And yet functional.
Yeah.
And this was during the point where I had just really started working. I was doing malpractice. I had some type of knowledge about medicine and dentistry, and I always tried to solve the case. And I noticed that every single case, there was always some seizure. They always had to put them on like the same type of medication, and it would always end up being something different. But, you know, after a while, they all started to sort of look the same, but I always tried to figure out like what systems weren't working or what it was. So it was very intriguing to me. Like I used it as sort of a show to help my knowledge of science.
That's a high compliment. That's a really good compliment, because I know you, like me, are not a passive viewer when it comes to TV. So
No,
obviously you saying that fully demonstrates that, but that's actually great. And one of the reasons House didn't make it is because I didn't watch, I think, the last 3 seasons in full.
Oh, okay.
I sort of faded out after a bit. And so I didn't watch the last seasons, but some of the episodes that I did watch in the last seasons were when he was in jail. And I thought they did them really well. They were hilarious, but I had lost sort of the train on that. So I was just watching it as one off. But you're right about Laurie, because I kind of knew him from a little bit of Fry and Laurie from Stephen Fry and him doing their comedy show in England. And so, excellent call. House is on my list, as everybody knows who've been watching these episodes. I count them down on here, and as everybody will see, our lists go on forever, actually. Okay, so House, number 9, good one. So my number 9 is actually one of the newest on my list, and its 7th season just completed, and its final season, though there is going to be a spinoff with the main character. And one of the reasons why I like this is because I also love the books. And this is Bosch. And it tells the story about police detective Harry Bosch, or Hieronymus Bosch is his real name. And I started reading the books in the early 90s. And Connolly's been publishing these books almost once a year, since then. But the TV show really picked up on sort of the noir-ish of the shows, but in a very real setting. It talks about the politics of the police force, and how the chief is a much different role than a detective, than a captain, than a lieutenant, and what have you. And I thought the characters and the actors in there are so fleshed out, and you know exactly who they are after the end of the first season, that it just allowed him to build on it with subsequent seasons. And luckily, he's not going away. He's just going to spin off, and they're going to start telling the stories of Bosch as a PI once he leaves the police force. So Bosch, it's a stream on Amazon. So if you have Amazon Prime, you can watch it, and it's well worth your investment. Each season got progressively better and better.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's actually on my list to watch. I haven't seen one episode, but I've been wanting to, but I want to be able to have the time to, you know, give it the right concentration and not just have it on in the background. Yep. And everything else going on. I just haven't been in that mental state to do that.
I agree. I will not watch a show like that or some of the ones on here unless I can pay attention. If I'm not in the mood to pay attention, I don't watch it.
Right. Yeah. Yep. But yeah, no, actually that makes me feel better now. I know I definitely have to watch it.
Oh yeah. Got to watch it. Cause I'll be interested. You and I could go back and talk about it.
Absolutely.
After you watch it. Okay. Drum roll, please. Stephanie, number 8.
Okay. Number 8. And I went back and forth about this because this show had a lot of meaning towards me. It really helped me center my views about certain things and gave me a sense of peace of mind at the same time. The Daily Show with Jon Stewart.
Oh, good one.
So he started in the late 90s. I graduated law school in the late 90s. I started to become a little bit more attuned to politics and what was going on, especially once I graduated. And he put this spin. First off, Jon Stewart's my hero. I just love him. And he put this satire spin on the ridiculousness of certain members of the government or our laws or what was going on in the media at the time in such an intelligent, creative way that it actually made me appreciate everything that was going on around me. And I looked forward to watching it every single time it was on.
That is an excellent pick. I remember Jon Stewart long before he took on The Daily Show. I mean, he was a stand-up comic in New York for years, and he did a couple of movies, couple of guest spots on TV, and then The Daily Show, like you said, he became a cultural icon. But think of all the people The Daily Show also gave rise to.
Absolutely.
I mean, that show has churned out some pretty good, very funny people. What I don't think people realize is that The Daily Show actually started with Craig Kilborn, who used to be
very long though.
No, because he was an ESPN anchor, and his snarkiness couldn't translate over to Comedy Central, and then they totally changed the show when Stewart came on. So that's an excellent cultural pick.
Yeah,
really good cultural pick. I like that one.
Thank you.
Nice. Okay, so my number 8 goes back to something my dad made me watch, and I was so not going to watch it because I thought it was going to be boring and stupid, and it was on Sundays, and I didn't want to miss football to watch this. This was before Sunday Night Football, but that was one of the excuses I made, even though football was over by the time this came on. And yet it turned into something that I go back and I revisit quite often. And it's the original Cosmos show with Carl Sagan.
I have never watched that.
Oh, that's okay. That's actually okay, because you were way younger. I mean, you were an infant when this thing
that much younger than you, but okay.
But to a certain extent, I mean, it birthed my curiosity about the science of just everything, and the way he would explain things and how relatable it was, and how much he could break down something as complex as general relativity and give you at least an example that could put it into something that you could get your mind around and maybe make you more curious about it. I got to imagine that scientists alive now, he was one of the reasons why they do what they did, because that show was such a touchstone back when it came out. It was so unique and so different from anything that had been on TV. And I really thought this is going to be the worst experience of my life. And every Sunday I would sit there and I would watch that thing with rapt attention. So the original Cosmos with Carl Sagan. And I actually have a book that I'm reading, one of his older books that I'm reading of his right now. And it's just as enthralling as it would have been now 30 years since it was originally published. So if you get a chance, go back and check it out.
Okay.
It's fun to watch. It is fun to watch. And some of the science has not evolved too far from what he was doing back then.
Right.
So
interesting.
That's my number 8.
Number 8. All right.
All right. What are you bringing up at 7?
Number 7. So this was a show that I used to watch. In the beginning, it was with my family. Mm-hmm. It introduced me to comedy sketches. Mm-hmm. It introduced me to comedy in general as a youngster, and just how actors can play certain roles, break character, yet still continue. Sure. And just joy that they had in doing these with other actors that were just as talented.
I think you might have picked one of mine.
So number 7 is the Carol Burnett Show.
You picked one of mine.
I loved it. I actually started rewatching some of the episodes recently because as I was putting the list together, it just made me smile. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Carol Burnett, Vicki Lawrence, Tim Conway.
Harvey Korman.
They had some amazing guests, like Maggie Smith was on there. Lucille Ball was on there. They had so many just amazing.
Dick Van Dyke.
Right? Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. Betty White.
Betty White was on it, on occasion.
They had some absolutely amazing skits, and every time that they would break character and really laugh, it just made me laugh. I loved that show.
I'm not going to tell you where it is on my list, and I'm going to save my comments for when it pops up, but it is on my list, and you are right. Even today, that comedy stands up to everything that's going on. It's better than anything else, I think, from a comedy standpoint, just pure comedy genius on the delivery, than pretty much anything that's been on since.
Yeah, agreed. I love that show.
Yeah. So I'll save my comments for when mine comes up, but that is an excellent choice. You get your first thumbs up on that one. Okay. My number 7 is sort of related to my number 8 in a particular way, in that it deals with science, but mine is science fiction / hopefully fact one day. It started out on FX and is now on Amazon. Its final season is coming up, maybe. Hopefully somebody else might pick it up, but it's called The Expanse. And it's based on a whole series of books that were written where I think it's however many hundreds of years into the future, and humans have colonized Mars, the asteroid belt, and an alien technology has presented itself. That's how it kind of evolves from the season 1 into where it is now. And from a purely scientific standpoint, it's one of the most accurate shows or movies to have ever been produced. The way they depict gravity in a ship, how you can create artificial gravity when you need gravity boots. It used to be, unfortunately, they've changed this a little bit, but any battle scene shown from the outside of the ships in space was always silent. There was no noise because there's no noise in space. They've changed that a little bit the last couple of seasons, but also the story itself is enthralling. The characters and the actors that they have for each of them are great. And it spawned a key sort of a phrase, "I am that guy." And if you see who says it and why he says it and how his character arc has evolved, it's one of the best lines, I think, in the history of TV, because the ominousness to the person he says it to is immediate, and you know exactly what's going to happen. But it was delivered in such a way and in such a context that I thought it was one of the best lines in TV that I've ever seen in TV. I am that guy is sort of one of those touchstones for me. So The Expanse is my number 7.
All right. I've watched the first season. I haven't watched it anymore, and it's on my list right next to Bosch.
Right. Well, and really Thomas Jane in that first season is the primary character that carries that season. The other characters start to carry future seasons, but he was great in that first season. Yeah. I mean, I loved him in that first season. That was some of the best stuff that he's done.
All right. Again, it's on my list.
Okay.
So, all right.
All right. We're going to round out your first 5 with number 6.
Okay. I'm actually going to read this because then you will know exactly what it is.
Oh, I'm excited now.
Okay. And so Dr. Beckett finds himself leaping from life to life, striving to put right what once went wrong, and hoping each time that his next leap is the leap home. My number 6 is Quantum Leap.
Wow. That's one that's not on my list and I hadn't even thought about in years.
Loved that show.
Okay.
between, Sam Beckett and his hologram, Al, and them trying to go through it. There were some amazing episodes of historical value,
right.
of, just really, and it's actually funny because I was, again, rewatching some of these recently, and he steps into the accelerator in the year 1999. That's right. So it wasn't even so far in advance, but the technology that they were showing was obviously much more advanced. But it just, again, that sort of started because that was in the 90s, and that started my pure sci-fi interest. That was that was like the beginning of when I just almost turned straight into sci-fi, fan. So, but I loved Quantum Leap. I always thought every episode was wonderful.
I really liked, so I wasn't a huge fan, but some of the episodes that I did see, to your point, I would tune in because of their historical context, and I wanted to see what they did with it. And they were always very smart with it. That show you, to your point, you had to be invested in it because you had to watch it to sort of understand what was going on. So
I found it very intelligent.
Yeah,
just with what they were doing, the dialogue, like even though they were like playing around a little bit with stuff, but like the dialogue itself, the topics, how they were trying to fix time and families and make it better. I mean, just what they came up with, about women's rights, about, sexual harassment, there was like so many amazing topics that they hit on way back when they weren't really so controversial, like as they are some of them today, in times.
You didn't deal with those topics on TV.
Yeah. Right. So I really did like that show.
You can think of Maude when Maude had an abortion.
Yep.
I mean, that was a huge deal back then. Excellent call. Quantum Leap. I like that one. All right. Good one. All right. So my number 6, I'm going to say, is the most quintessential New York City show of all time.
Oh,
okay. I didn't realize how New York City it was until I really opened my eyes and ears to the city and what have you. And then after I moved into the city, it was just, I can't believe it. And the amount of times that I quote or reference this show is almost on a daily basis. It really is. I'm annoying to some people, I'm sure.
Should I say it for you?
You certainly may, because you probably got it. But go for it. That's absolutely. Seinfeld is my number 6. Outside of the last episode, which I hated.
Oh, I hated that.
Yeah, the finale was just, I know what they were trying to do, but they didn't do it.
Yeah.
They didn't pull it off.
Yeah.
That whole show was brilliant from start to finish. And it started out as the Seinfeld Chronicles, and the very first conversation is about the second button on a shirt and how important it was to get that positioning right, because then it's either open too far or it's up too tight, and it was just, I was hooked from the beginning.
Yeah, they had some great. That was one of my shows that I contemplated. It did not make the top 10 for me, but I do obviously enjoy Seinfeld. How can you not?
Oh, yeah.
And you can make a Seinfeld reference. I can make a Seinfeld reference, I think, every day based upon everything. There's no question. It hit on everything. And all 4 characters worked with each other so well and played off of each other.
Yeah.
I mean, the show wouldn't have lasted if they weren't all part of it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I mean, each character was so different, and yet they were all the same to a certain extent. And that's what made it so much fun. And I will never get over it. I don't think there could be a better character on TV than Cosmo Kramer.
He was awesome.
I mean, that is just, I'm desperate for a neighbor sort of like that, except I'm going to keep my door locked more often.
Oh, he was awesome. He was. Yeah. He played it well.
Yeah. So yeah, Seinfeld's my number 6.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Your top 5.
Top 5. Okay. So number 5, is started before I was born. It was a half-hour comedy show that I am surprised it lasted as long as it did based upon the topics that it did. All in the Family.
Oh, that's on my list. So didn't make my top 10, but it's on my overall list.
It was the perfect satire show about society, about the issues going on in the 60s, about the difference of class, of race, and making fun of it through the eyes of this older, blinded type of man who had a progressive daughter, progressive son-in-law, and it was the most popular show across the country. And I don't know if people really understood really what the show was doing. It was so intelligent. And I mean, come on, Archie Bunker. I mean, it started, Maude was part of it. The Jeffersons was part of it. Right. I mean, it really launched a ton of other shows, and it was done so well.
Well, it gave them the freedom to talk about these topics, these taboo topics. And I don't think in the hands of another actor outside of Carol O'Connor, maybe that Archie Bunker does not come off the way he came off, because really on the surface, he's totally unlikable. I mean, he's just an angry white guy in today's parlance. Back then, you wouldn't have called him that. He was a bigot and whatnot. And he thought he was the king of the house. But that show proved he was never king of the hill.
Nope. It was such a good show.
It was. Yeah, and a lot of people know him from the TV show In the Heat of the Night.
Yeah.
They don't even know him as Archie Bunker.
I know. So. Isn't that scary?
Yeah.
Edith, I loved the opening scene with her on the piano singing the song.
Gene Stapleton.
In her most, I don't know.
New York voice. That nasal New York voice.
Oh, God, it was just awesome. It was just awesome.
So we're going to sidetrack real quick. I just watched the movie Clute again. It's from the 1970s. It's with Jane Fonda and Donald Sutherland. But she plays the secretary to somebody in there. And I knew when it was coming, so I just closed my eyes because she has the exact same voice. And it's nasally and it's just sharp and it just cuts through your ears and whatnot.
Awesome.
So, yeah, again, another one of those openings back when TV shows had openings that are iconic.
Yep.
Okay, good call. Excellent call on number 5. Okay, my number 5 is number 5 because of the intelligence and the realism they brought to where I think the world is going when it comes to technology. And it's not a good place. Now, the primary intelligence in artificial intelligence in this show is supposed to be benevolent, but the guy who created it steals it because the humans using it are not benevolent. And the way this show evolved over 5 seasons and whatnot, and again, the characters and the storylines and what have you, were just fascinating, and how smart they made it. And part of the reasons why it was smart is Jonah Nolan, Christopher Nolan's brother, was one of the co-creators of it, and it's person of interest. And if folks know, Jim Caviezel was in there, Taraji Henson, that was one of her big breakout roles. And then Michael Emerson, who was on Lost, which is a show on my list, but not on my top 10 list. He was on there, but the smartness of it, how well they adhered to what the technology will and can currently do.
Mm-hmm.
That show should have scared the hell out of people way more than it did. And to this day, some of the episodes make me really nervous because I know it's what's happening. And it's why I would like to take my phone and usually just throw it in the river and let it just stay there and never see the light of day again. But Person of Interest is my number 5 show for the technology and then the human stories. all the stories around it, especially the main characters, were always so well done, especially as the show evolved and got more and more complex. And an actress on there, Amy Acker, who joined the show a couple seasons in, she's part of my list further up. And so she was fantastic on there, but that whole series was just great. And to this day still unnerves me in certain ways.
I've actually never watched a single episode.
That's probably good, because then you become paranoid like me, and then all things start to break down. And
Okay, all right. Well, maybe I'll check it out.
Though Jim Caviezel in the black suit,
Yep.
iconic. Black suit, white shirt, and the white shirt never got dirty. Don't know how you do that in New York in the summer, but God bless him.
All right, good one.
Okay, 4.
So 4 is another half-hour comedy show of 4 women that would not work if they were not together. That really, to me, stands the test of time. I think everyone can relate to, if not all of them, the majority of them.
Right.
And I can put it on now and still smile and still laugh at some of those episodes. And I'm referring to, I'm sure you probably already figured this out, the Golden Girls.
Absolutely. I just watched 3 of the episodes yesterday.
Yeah, it's just iconic between all of them. I mean, it's almost like an earlier Seinfeld.
Yes.
Of just women, at a certain age, living with each other because their lives basically went to crap. Mm-hmm. And it's them trying to figure it out and finding these friendships later in life, and just, what they did, and, from like New York to Miami, most of them. I think it was just, I just love the show. I mean, my friends and I still like joke around going, so when are we getting our Golden Girls house? I mean, it's just.
I'm a few years away, but you know what? I don't.
Such a great show! It was done perfectly.
Yes, I was watching it the other day, and Betty White, she kept referencing St. Olaf's, and I just, every time she would go into it, and how they held straight faces, and how B. Arthur could sit there and listen to those lines and have to play the straight man or woman in this case every time and not crack up is a testament to how great she was.
Yeah, there's one episode where, and because I've been watching them, and I read up on the episode itself and I caught it, and I was so proud of myself. It's the one episode where B. Arthur and Rue McClanahan actually broke character, and they were completely laughing genuinely. And it was one of the scenes, and I don't know if you remember this episode, where they're sitting at the kitchen table. It's just the 3 of them with Betty White, and Betty White's talking about herrings back in the St.
yes.
And they're sitting at the table and talking about shooting a herring out of a cannonball. And you see B. Arthur and Rue McClanahan turn to each other, grab each other's arm, and sort of hide their faces because they could not keep a straight face. And I read up on it, and it was the only time I was able to pick it out. And it's just wonderful. It's just wonderful.
You can actually YouTube that. That clip is on YouTube. And now I'm going to go look at it because I want to catch that. Because I miss it. Because the way Betty White delivers it, again, she's the straight person. The other 2, though, have to carry that scene as to being exasperated with her. And, okay. I'm gonna go look up that scene because that is good fodder for a good laugh.
And I think it's the 1st or 2nd season. It's early on.
Okay.
It's such a great I just love the show. It was definitely going to be in my top 5. There's no question.
Okay, that's good. I like that. I can't believe you picked that, and I watched 3 episodes yesterday. That's pretty funny. Okay, number 4. Is a childhood one. It's not the greatest show of all time, but to a certain extent, it was, I won't say the most influential, but it inspired imagination in me unlike most other shows that I've ever watched. And I know how unrealistic it is now, especially from a scientific standpoint, but I love this show and I still love this show. And it's the $6 Million Man.
That was on my list, but it didn't make my top 10. It was a good show. That and The Bionic
Woman. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Both of them were just, were my shows. They were my action adventure shows, primarily the $6 Million Man.
Great show.
But Jamie Summers, there's an episode where a doppelganger of hers takes a drug that looks like silly putty she's eating and whatnot. And the complexity of that episode, when I go back and I watch that, I was like, wow, that was pretty big for the mid 70s and what have you. But the $6 Million Man, and back then they had an episode with a two-parter with Bigfoot, played by Andre the Giant. That episode, I didn't sleep all night after watching that episode. My mom was so mad because I was up all night and whatnot. But I love that show. It's only available on DVD now, but that thing gets popped in whenever I want to travel back and whatnot. And I've always imagined what it must feel like to be able to run at 60 miles an hour. But
yeah, it's a good show. Good call.
It's a good show.
That's a good show. I like that.
And again, another iconic opening.
Yeah. Yep. Well, old school. All those old school shows, their openings were amazing. I mean,
well, they didn't have the commercials. Yeah, they didn't have the commercials, so they were able to do the openings and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, love that show.
Good one. I like that.
Okay, we're into your fixed top 3, so I can't wait to hear what these are.
Okay, number 3.
Yep.
Was Sunday night HBO back in the day, where they had the most amazing lineup.
Yep.
This is Dysfunctional Family Who Owns a Funeral Home. It was all about death and like just survival and, you know, how to live life to its fullest without losing it.
Right.
And every episode brought more and more interesting stories, and it was just dark. And to this day, I think it is the absolute best series finale episode of all time. I have watched that episode dozens of times, and I just love it. I thought it brought the entire show to such the perfect closure.
Yep.
And of course, I'm talking about 6 Feet Under.
Sure.
Loved. Everything about that show was amazing. The writing, Alan Ball. It was his first, I mean, it was, his
first big
his
series.
First big hit. Yeah. Again, the music in the beginning. Mm-hmm. I mean, it just is, it's, as I said, top 3. I knew my top 3 instantly, and that was obviously going to be one of them. So I just happened to love that show.
I watched the first season, but not the subsequent seasons. And everybody does say that, though, who are fans of the show, that the last episode is one of the best finales of all time.
It was, I mean, it made me cry, it made me laugh, but it wrapped everything up perfectly. There was no questions, no nothing. And it went along with the entire theme of the show. Like, it was done so well. It was written so intelligently. It was great.
And who would have thought one of the characters went on to be a serial killer? So,
right. Exactly.
I mean, that's where Michael C. Hall made his real name. Was Dexter, of which apparently had one of the worst series finales of all time, that they had to bring it back to try to fix what they got wrong.
That was horrible. I'm sorry. That was a horrible ending.
I watched the first 3 seasons of Dexter. And then
I've watched them all because of Michael C. Hall. Yeah. But yeah, no, it doesn't even hold a candle to 6 Feet Under.
Okay. Little trivia question. Michael C. Hall played Lazarus in the David Bowie musical, the off-Broadway musical that they put on before before Bowie died. Huh. Lazarus ran downtown in Lower Manhattan for, I think, a couple of months or weeks. But Michael C. Hall was Lazarus in there. So just a little, did you know that? ? Okay, my number 3 has already been mentioned on this countdown by somebody who shall not be named, Stephanie. It's the Carol Burnett Show. I mean,
come on.
I still go back and I try to watch it as often as I can.
Oh,
there is just, I mean, from her Tarzan call to her Q&A with the audience. I mean, just, she would put herself out there and the audience would ask and she would answer. Obviously the audience was respectful and whatnot, but she got some personal questions and she was upfront about them.
I rewatched one. Sorry, I rewatched one, and one of the audience members asked her for her measurements.
Oh, yes.
And so she ended up giving her measurements, and she's like, "But I'm not telling you in what order they are." Yeah. And then she brought out, was it Lyle? I think. Lyle
Wagner.
Yeah, I think she brought out Lyle Wagner. So she says, "Anyone have any questions for him?" And someone screams out, "What's your measurements?" I mean, it was just, it was like even down to the audience. It was just right. the comedic value was just amazing.
Well, I would have loved to have been there during taping because you could not have left that taping without stomach pains because you were laughing so hard. I mean, there is nothing better than watching Tim Conway and Harvey Korman, or Tim Conway break up Harvey Korman, because Harvey Korman was the worst at keeping the straight face. He just couldn't do it.
Tim Conway was amazing. He never broke. He just continued to go on. Yes. Like when he played like the old man and he would shuffle along. Oh my, I mean, it's great.
And he would never speed up.
No.
I mean, no matter how long it took. And some of those sketches took a while just because they played up that buildup and what have you.
It was great.
Yeah, that show. It's, to me, it's the funniest show I've ever seen. Consistently, the funniest show I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's a great show. Well, I'm glad both of our lists. That's amazing.
Yeah, tells we have good taste.
Yeah,
we have good taste.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm getting excited. What's number 2?
Number 2 is my favorite motorcycle club, Sons of Anarchy.
Oh, I did not think you would be a fan of that.
Oh my God, are you kidding? I could not get enough of it. I have little figurines of Sons of Anarchy. I started rewatching the entire series. I'm on season 2 right now. I don't know what it is. First off, it's Kurt Sutter. Kurt Sutter is amazing. And I loved him from watching The Shield.
Shield, yes. Shield was.
Which was on my list, but didn't make the top 10.
Yes.
And I just loved it. Absolutely loved it. But Sons of Anarchy, there's just something about that whole family dynamic. Just, the stepfather with the mom, with the drugged up wife and, the doctor, and just everything about the show. It just, I just absolutely love it. And I can watch it time and time again. It's bloody, it's dark, it's dysfunction I seem to be using a lot lately. But
you kind of like those shows.
Everything, I don't know, it just puts everything in it. I just loved it. Like everything about it. I don't know what character I even like better.
So I've never watched it, but I was a huge fan of The Shield. And so I know Sutter's just got that. That's his modus operandi, is that kind of intensity of show and whatnot. So I can just imagine maybe that'll be something I add to my list.
Yeah, I absolutely, to me, it's completely worth it. No question. My favorite episode is the second to last episode of the series, which really should have just been the finale. And to this day, it still brings me chills.
Okay. That's good.
Yep.
I like that.
Yep. So that's my number.
Sons of Anarchy. That's good. That's one we had never talked about. I'd never known that you were a fan of. That's really good. I got surprised today.
There you go.
I like that. Okay. My number 2, as I've done with every one of these episodes, because it is my show, so I could do what I please within reason. This is a bit of a cheat. Ooh. This is 3 shows combined into one number. And it's all based on the guy who created it. Now he's fallen out of favor because he's got apparently a Napoleonic complex that he likes to exert and what have you, but it doesn't diminish the quality of the content that he's created. And this is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, and Firefly.
Yep.
Now, Firefly broke one of the rules that I had put for myself, that it had to be more than one season. But Firefly, that season was about as good as television can get. And I blame the executives at Fox of just being idiots and not knowing what they had. So Joss Whedon is the creator of all three. He was the co-creator of Angel. But those three shows all did something for me in different ways. And that I got into it. I think it was Buffy the Vampire's third episode. And I thought, this is going to be as cheesy as the movie was. And then I watched it, and it was about an entity that can inspire your worst fears. And for Buffy, her worst fear was the rejection of her dad. And the way they played that scene and then juxtaposed it with the one character's fear of clowns and whatnot, I thought, this is brilliant. And so I immediately went back as quickly as I could to watch the first two, and then was addicted all the way through.
Yep. I loved Buffy. I loved all of them. I watched all of them.
Yes.
But I loved Buffy. One of my favorite episodes of Buffy was, and I'm sorry if I'm ruining this for anyone who's watching this show.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
Is when her mom died.
Yes, the body.
Of how they did that.
No
and
music.
Just everything about it. It really was done. I mean, it was just done really well. It was eerie. It was shot perfectly, and it really got to that whole feeling of you don't know what the hell is going on.
Right.
And I thought it was done well. I also like the one like Say It With Feeling.
Feeling. Oh, the musical. Oh.
Well, I do. I'm actually a very big Buffy fan. I do like it. Didn't make my top 10, but I do like it.
I think my favorite episode, I think the body's the most emotional, especially as to when it falls within the series and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's a transitional point where she goes from a girl with superpowers to an adult with superpowers to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But I think the episode with the gentleman, where everybody loses their voices.
Oh my God, that was so creepy. I loved that.
So creepy.
Loved that episode. That was awesome.
Even today, I get a little creeped out. I just got chills down my back.
Yes. Chills.
I get a little creeped out by that episode.
And I watched that episode multiple times through the year. I really do. I really do like that episode. It was a good one.
Yes. And I will say this, I think from a season to season basis, I actually think Angel maintained its level of quality throughout higher than Buffy did, but Buffy's the more seminal show because it was the first.
Yeah.
And the stories that it told were never told before with a woman, or in this case, a young girl, as the protagonist.
Yeah.
And that's what really changed the game, and I think opened things up a lot, and really why it is as important as it is. But all three of the shows, and Firefly, if you haven't seen it, or if you haven't seen the movie Serenity, which I think is fantastic, except for what they did to Wash, you got to go back and see these. These are tremendous TV shows.
I will concur. I loved it. So.
Okay. Here it goes. This is it. You're coming home strong. What's number one?
Number one, West Wing.
Oh, that makes sense.
Political, most intelligent dialogue ever. I mean, it was fast-paced. It showed the behind the scenes. I'm sure it's as close to reality as could be. I wish Martin Sheen was our president. I absolutely loved him. I just all of the characters showing exactly what they do for the White House, from the president down to his secretary, to his assistant, to, you know, the chief of staff, to, I mean, just like the deputy, everything. It was all, every character was amazing. And just how they rotated that through all 7 seasons, you know, up to the point of the next president, which was Jimmy Smits.
Right.
It was every time I watched it, I learned something. It was just the dialogue and our foreign relations and just everything about it. I just thought it was done so well. And again, it just grouped me into that whole political concept that I was starting to do, you know, so it was just wonderful.
Well, 2 things from there. One, it definitely showed everything is politics and money. They were never shy about that. Even when he tried to be as moral as possible, sometimes the politics dictated, I gotta make the choice that I don't think is the best choice. But 2, you now know what an Aaron Sorkin production or script sounds like, because the dialogue is, I mean, he just can't help but write really good dialogue.
Oh, it's I mean, just the fact that they were able to do it at such a pace and continue. I mean, it's all like there's nothing there that doesn't have any dialogue whatsoever. One of my favorite episodes is when the secretary to the president dies in a car crash, and they're having the service, and, you know, Martin Sheen playing the president, they're in church, and he asks for, you know, a couple minutes alone after the service is done. And Martin Sheen in real life is very Catholic. I mean, he's very devout. And he has this soliloquy that he's literally speaking or preaching to God over, like, how horrible that he let this woman die. Over what it was. And he takes out a cigarette, takes one puff, and puts it out in the middle of the church and storms off. And that entire scene was done with such emotion, and just the language that was used for his fury at God when he was devout, not just in real life, but even in the show, is absolutely unbelievable. It was just written precisely the way that it should be. It was done. It was just perfect.
That show caught lightning in a bottle. It just had the right mixture of producer, director, writer, cast, who could deliver that dialogue, because that dialogue is hard to deliver without sounding stupid. I mean, because you can really, if you can't deliver those lines with the intended effect, the whole show just breaks down. And all it takes is one person. And I will say this, to this day, it's what made me a huge fan of Allison Janney.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, there's nothing that I don't like her in, but it was that show that really exposed me to realizing, oh, she is just tremendous. So if you want to sit there and watch paint dry, I'm watching it.
It's great. It's a great show.
So that makes total sense. Your number one is absolutely indicative of who you are in the conversations we've had. So kudos to you.
Thank you. All right, your number one.
Okay, my number one. This series lasted almost 4 times longer than the actual conflict. It was a tremendous movie that only had one cast member carry over from the movie to the TV show. To this day, I think the first 3 seasons are some of the funniest writing I've ever heard. And the last 8+ seasons are some of the most morally confounding that you'll ever watch. Sometimes it bordered on preachy, sometimes it crossed over, but most of the times all it was trying to do is make you think of the cost of decisions. And this show is MASH.
Good one.
I will watch this show. Anytime I scroll past, I stop. I have to check out which episode it is, and I'm usually reciting the dialogue as they go along. And in fact, yesterday, after watching the Golden Girls, I'm flipping through, and one of my favorite episodes is on, in which they do the entire episode from the perspective of the patient. So the entire episode is of the patient getting wounded, getting through triage, getting to the 4077, getting treated, and you see the entire interaction from that viewpoint. The camera never cuts to a different viewpoint except that of the patient. Wow. And that's all you see. And I thought this would have been the most boring episode handled incorrectly. And yet it was one of the best episodes on TV that I had ever seen. And so hands down, MASH is my favorite show of all time.
Wow. It's a good one.
And it has the funniest line that I continue to repeat. And I'm going to explain it for everybody. This is a season in which it's BJ Honeycutt. So it's later into the series. And BJ, a friend of BJ, shows up. He, the friend, and Hawkeye are in the swamp about to have some gin from the still. And BJ says cheers to his friend, and Hawkeye says L'chaim. And the friend of BJ's looks at Hawkeye and says, "What's that mean?" He says, "Bottoms up from right to left." And to this day, I laugh my head off on that, because my mom had to explain it to me, and then once I got it, because in Hebrew you write right to left, to this day, the whole context of it, how he delivers it such offhandedly, and what I eventually learned it is, anytime that episode's on, I will, even if I'm late for something, I will watch it until that line comes up, and then I'll leave.
That's awesome. It was a good show. I watched it. I didn't have that same connection to it, but I understand the connection. I understand why. When I was Googling TV shows in order to put this list together,
sure,
it was always within the top 10, if not the top 5. It was always there. And I searched, and I was coming up with stuff that I was like, oh my God, I totally forgot about that show. And that's how I was able to come to this. It was just, but yeah, MASH was always up there. It's a good choice.
Think about all the shows that you've watched that we've probably forgotten, that we really enjoyed and didn't write down because we've just forgotten.
Yeah.
That's kind of the influence pop culture has on people, is that you get into something. But the fact that we've remembered at least these 10 is pretty good. Yeah. So as we do on these episodes, that is our top 10. Yeah, both of our lists are below, so you can check it out. You can comment, you can criticize, you can give us your top 10. We want to hear from you, but we do give you 2 that honorable mentions, 2 that did not make our top 10, but are definitely on our list that we think you should check out. And so Stephanie, you fire first. You get to give us your 2 honorable mentions.
All right. Some of them I've already mentioned that were already on my list, so I'm not going to bring those up again. One was One Day at a Time.
Oh, good call.
I thought the time period of a single mother working, raising 2 kids in an apartment complex without the need for a man at the time was so progressive. And I just thought everything about that show was done really well.
Yes.
So there was that one. And then to go back to my sci-fi roots, I have to say Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yeah, good call.
Captain Picard, he's my heart. I love him. Patrick Stewart, he is awesome. One of my favorite episodes is when he lives an entire life in 8 minutes.
Right.
I forgot the name of the episode right now.
Yeah.
but there's so many episodes. Q, just everything about that show.
Who's coming back for the
Yes.
second season of Picard? John
Yep.
Delancey will be
Cannot
on.
wait.
Yes,
So,
I might actually buy Paramount Plus.
Yep.
Just to watch that, because Q was, outside of the Borg, Q was one of the best creations, I think, in the Star Trek universe.
Everything that comes out of Q's mouth, it was just like in that one episode where he has him relive his childhood when he was back just graduating.
Yep.
And he comes in and he's delivering flowers and he's like, is there a Gene Luck Pickard here? just everything that Q did just needed a little bit comical.
Right.
With this serious concept of what was going on. And it's Star Trek. I'm all into the sci-fi and just the intelligence of futuristic and what this world can be. And I had a hard time in taking that off. But
it's on the list.
Yeah. So those
and Q is what introduced Starfleet to the Borg.
Yeah.
And so because he wanted to knock our arrogance down a peg, humanity's arrogance down a peg or two. And he did just that. And he set in motion some of the best bad guys in Star Trek lore.
Yeah. Look, there's a reason why Q was in the final episodes.
Right.
That series.
All good things.
All good things must come to an end. Come on.
Yep.
I'm telling you, it was he was a great character.
Good.
Whoopi Goldberg was in the damn series when you think about it. Yep. They've had some really, it's just it was great. So yeah.
I love that. Great.
I love
call.
That. Yeah.
So mine are a little bit different from yours because I wanted to go outside the box.
Okay.
Like you, my list goes on and on and on. And I could have kept adding things. So I wanted to do two different ones that people might not have thought about and what have you. And the first one, you couldn't do this show now, but back when it ran, again, I couldn't help but laugh almost every moment of every episode. And that's the Benny Hill Show.
Okay, I totally get it.
You can't do that show now.
No.
But back then, oh my God. And my dad introduced me to that show. And after my parents got divorced, it was one of those common things that my dad and I had. And we would watch that on whenever we could find it because it wasn't on continuously here. And it was on Channel 9, I think, would run the repeats, if I remember correctly. And, but man, did I laugh. And Benny Hill, he could turn a look and just make you go bent over in hysterics. Yeah. He didn't have to say anything, didn't have to do anything. And then he would always do those speeded up sequences and whatnot that just made it all the more absurd and whatnot. And I think that's what I really liked is just the absurdity of what he did. And what, and so the Benny Hill Show, if you want to laugh, go check that out. The other one, this one almost replaced Mission Impossible. Almost.
Wow.
And it's the original Twilight Zone.
That was on my list.
The original Twilight Zone, there are some episodes that scare the hell out of me still on there, but all of them I love using this word, all of them unnerve you.
Yeah.
They're all just kind of creepy and whoa, what's going on? And what have you?
Do you remember the episode with Robert Redford?
Oh yeah. He
was awesome. And I can't remember. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, I don't have the names of the episodes.
That was, and I've watched that episode multiple times. First off, just his acting alone and just watching him as the young Robert Redford.
Right.
But that storyline was,
well, and this was a couple years before he hit it big in the movies. So he's still a nobody at this point. But the job he did. But my favorite is the one with Burgess Meredith.
Yes.
Who plays basically he hates humanity, just wants to read his books.
Yep.
He's in a bunker. There's a war or something happens. He looks out. Humanity is basically gone. It's just him and his books.
Yeah.
And as he steps out, he steps on his eyeglasses. And I thought, oh, I mean, even as a kid, you could feel what that meant and the crushing blow that kind of dealt. And I mean, there's so many episodes. The one where the patriarch makes the family wear the masks because they keep fighting over his fortune.
Right.
And when they take off the masks, they're all pigs and whatnot. I mean, it's just, Rod Serling was just.
That's a good one. It was on my list, but yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. Well, there you go, folks. 24 TV shows for you to check out. So my suggestion is put in your 2 weeks notice. Let your boss know you're quitting because you're going to go watch the TV shows that you learned about on Did You Know That? And that you'll be back when you're done. And you'll be all the better for it, for doing so. Most of these that we talked about, you can stream, I think. Some of them, like the $6 Million Man, I think you can only get on DVDs and whatnot. But believe me, all these episodes and all these shows are well worth your time and your investment.
Agreed.
Stephanie, this was fun.
This was great. Thank you.
I knew I was picking the right partner to do this one with.
Thank you. No, this was great. Now all I want to do is watch these shows over and over.
I mean, I'm going to take some of yours. I'm going to go back and I'm going to watch.
Yep.
Watch them. I might actually start watching Sons of Anarchy. So
on Hulu.
All right.
You can stream it on Hulu.
Well, great. Another one I have to keep. I got to figure out all this stuff. You know what? I think I'm going to give my boss my 2 weeks notice and say I'm out of here. Yeah. I wonder how she'll feel about that. Yeah.
I'm going to refrain from commenting.
Yeah, please do. Because this episode does not get edited. So, hey, well, this was great.
Thank you again for asking me. And any other ones you want, I'm in. Just let me know.
Okay, I'm gonna do these periodically. I'm gonna come up with some other ones. You know what? You and I got it. You and I are gonna do a sci-fi one.
Oh, done.
We'll do it across mediums. Across books, TV, movies, podcasts, whatever. We'll do a sci-fi one. You may be the first three-peat on Did You Know That?
Yeah. Oh, that would be excellent. Oh, I already know what I'm doing.
Okay. Well, you start working on it.
Top three.
Okay. You start working on that and then we'll talk about it and we'll get it scheduled to record. But Stephanie, you were great as always. Remember, everybody, check out a previous episode when we talk about actually what she's an expert in work-wise, because she's definitely an expert in TV shows. And if you want to hit her up, she's also an expert in music. We've actually been to quite a few concerts together. So, and we'll be going to more once they reopen. But I want to thank all the viewers. You've been watching Did You Know That? Top 10 list of TV shows. This episode, just like will come out on a Thursday morning. So be sure to tune in. But the best thing to do is subscribe with the bell, which is over there or over here, depending on where you're watching this, because then you'll be notified as new content comes out. But if you have questions, comments, want to post your own top 10 list, be sure to do so in the comments below. And we'll open a dialogue with everybody as to why we're right and you should follow our lead. Anyway, thanks everybody out there in the ether. You be well. And Stephanie, until we talk about science fiction, you take care.
Absolutely. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.